Have you ever stepped into a room and felt it without a word being spoken, that silent tension in the air, a glance that lingers a little too long, a smile that never reaches the eyes, as if something about your presence unsettles the people around you? You start to wonder what you did wrong, what you said, or who you offended, but sometimes the answer lies much deeper. Hatred does not always shout. Sometimes it hides behind politeness, behind nods and formalities, behind distance that slowly grows. In this reflection, we are not here to judge or complain. We are here to understand. To uncover the silent reasons why people may resent you without ever saying a word. Through the lens of Stoic philosophy, we will dive into the shadows of envy, projection, values, misunderstandings, and more. This is not about blame. This is about clarity. So if you have ever felt quietly misunderstood, secretly disliked, or judged unfairly, stay with me. What you hear today might not just explain what happened to you. It may set you free from it forever. And before we begin, if you find peace in these reflections and strength in this voice, I ask only one favor. Subscribe to Stoic Legacy. It helps this message reach others who need it. Now take a deep breath, clear your mind, and let us begin. Reason number 1. Envy and jealousy. This is one of the most silent and corrosive reasons why people secretly resent you. It rarely starts with hostility. In fact, it usually begins with admiration. They see you achieve something, grow in silence, walk into a room with calm certainty, speak with presence, remain grounded while others spiral. At first, they admire your strength. But as your light grows, something uncomfortable begins to stir in them. Their praise becomes sparse, their energy turns strange, and you sense the change even if they never say a word. This is the hidden storm of envy. It is not always loud. It is not always obvious. But it is always personal. Jealousy poisons relationships quietly. And what makes it dangerous is that it has nothing to do with what you have done wrong. It has everything to do with how your presence reveals their own lack. Your discipline reminds them of their excuses. Your progress reflects their procrastination. Your calm becomes a mirror they cannot bear to look into. You become a symbol, not of arrogance, but of what they could have been, if only they had chosen differently. And so they begin to pull away, criticize subtly, downplay your success, or talk behind your back. Not because you harmed them, but because you dared to rise. In the words of Marcus Aurelius, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Their envy is not your burden. Their bitterness is not your fault. You are not responsible for the wounds they refuse to confront. What you represent is their unrealized potential, and for many, it is easier to attack the mirror than to change what they see in it. Stoicism teaches you to remain unmoved. Let them talk. Let them judge. You do not exist to soothe another's insecurity. You are here to live fully, to grow deeply, and to remain rooted in integrity. Their resentment is the price of your evolution. And you do not owe anyone the comfort of your dimmed light. Shine anyway. Quietly. Boldly. And when you notice envy wrapped in polite silence, do not retaliate. Do not shrink. Simply keep walking. Because those who cannot celebrate you often have not yet accepted themselves. And that is not your war to fight. Reason number 1. Envy and jealousy. Some of the deepest forms of resentment do not come from your mistakes, they come from your presence. From the way you walk into a room with quiet confidence, from the way your life reflects purpose, discipline, and progress. This kind of hatred does not shout, it hides behind small talk, half-hearted praise, or sudden silence. It is the kind of hatred born from envy and jealousy, a silent corrosion that begins when someone sees in you everything they have denied themselves. Maybe you never intended to provoke anyone, but your consistency, your growth, your very light begins to illuminate the shadows they have tried so hard to ignore. Your achievements become a mirror, not just of what they lack, but of what they could have been if they had made different choices. At first they may have admired you, maybe even supported you, but admiration without inner stability often mutates into bitterness. And so, the applause turns to absence, the support becomes skepticism, the smiles grow tight. You begin to feel the chill without understanding where it comes from. They may try to discredit you in subtle ways. Undermine your efforts in conversation. Gossip when you are not in the room. Not because you failed them, but because you did not fail like them. That is the harsh truth envy does not like to admit. And when you carry yourself without apology, when you continue moving forward with clarity and calm, their discomfort deepens. They are not reacting to your success alone, they are reacting to what your success says about their stagnation. It is not your fault, but you become the target. Stoic wisdom teaches us that you are not responsible for the inner unrest of others. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that we have power only over our own mind, not over how others choose to perceive us. So do not shrink for the comfort of others. Do not apologize for doing the inner work they have refused to do. But also, do not meet envy with pride. Meet it with stillness. With grace. Recognize that silent hostility is often a reflection of unresolved pain. You are not here to fix that pain. You are here to walk your path. Their resentment is not your burden. Their projection is not your identity. You owe them no explanation for the peace you have earned or the confidence you carry. What you do owe yourself is integrity. Poise. The unshakable clarity to keep moving forward even when misunderstood. Because in the end, those who envy you are not fighting you. They are fighting the version of themselves they never became. Let them. And while they do, you keep building. Keep becoming. Quietly, relentlessly, without needing to be liked. That is the Stoic way. Reason number 2. Misunderstandings and ineffective communication. Not every wound is caused by betrayal, not every cold glance hides envy, and not every fading connection is rooted in malice. Sometimes, what breaks relationships is far simpler and far more silent. It is a misunderstanding. A misheard word, a misread silence, an intention that never reached the heart of the one it was meant for. These are the cracks that appear quietly but widen over time until the foundation of trust collapses. What begins as a single moment of misalignment slowly turns into an entire narrative, one where you become the villain without even knowing there was a story unfolding. Maybe you meant to help but came off controlling. Maybe your silence was born from exhaustion but looked like arrogance. Maybe your directness was meant to clarify but was taken as coldness. The truth is, most people do not see you as you are. They see you as they are, shaped by their insecurities, their past betrayals, their hidden wounds. As Marcus Aurelius once observed, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. And yet, once someone has built a story about you in their mind, they live in it as if it were reality. They react not to your actual self but to their imagined version of you. This is why a simple misunderstanding can give birth to lasting resentment. The tragedy is, the longer it goes unspoken, the more it grows. They begin to act distant. You begin to feel the shift. And instead of asking, clarifying, reconnecting, both sides retreat into silence. That silence becomes a wall. And behind that wall, judgment festers. In the Stoic path, we are called to cultivate clarity not just in our thoughts, but in our speech. To speak with care, to listen with attention, and to never assume that being heard means being understood. When there is confusion, we do not defend ourselves with ego. We respond with curiosity. Where did this go wrong? What was misunderstood? Can we meet again in truth? But when the other person clings more tightly to their story than to the possibility of reconciliation, then our role is to accept. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It means recognizing what is outside our control. You cannot force someone to unlearn their narrative if they prefer it over the real you. What you can do is remain rooted in your own clarity. Do not carry guilt for what was never your intention. Do not chase approval from someone who stopped seeking truth. And above all, do not become bitter in response to their confusion. As Seneca reminds us, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The story they have built about you is theirs to untangle. Your peace lies in knowing your words, your actions, your silence came from a place of integrity. And when that is not enough, you walk away, not in anger, but in wisdom. Because misunderstanding may create distance, but how you respond defines whether that distance becomes war or peace. That is the Stoic way. Reason number 4 is the influence of rumors and gossip, the kind of slow poison that never shouts but whispers just loud enough to change how others see you before you ever get a chance to speak. It is not always what you do that makes people pull away. Sometimes it is the stories they hear, retold by those who never really knew you, embellished by those who secretly resented you, or misunderstood by those who never bothered to ask. Gossip does not need evidence. It only needs attention. It spreads like wildfire not because it is true but because it is convenient. It satisfies the human hunger for drama, for stories that are easier to digest than reality itself. You may find yourself suddenly treated differently, noticed less, doubted more, and you do not even know why. That is because you are no longer being judged for your truth but for someone else's narrative. You become the villain in a play you never auditioned for. What is worse is that some people will believe the worst about you not because they want to hurt you but because the lie confirms something they already feared or resented deep inside. As Marcus Aurelius said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke. Stoicism teaches you not to chase rumors down like scattered feathers in the wind. Your peace lies not in controlling every tongue that speaks your name but in mastering the state of your mind so no lie can penetrate your calm. Let others talk. Let them assume. Let them judge. What matters is that you remain anchored in who you are. Character, not reputation, is what carries weight in the long run. You do not need to fight shadows with swords. Let your consistency, your integrity, your truth, speak for itself over time. Because while gossip moves quickly, truth moves deeply. Eventually, those who matter will see clearly, and those who do not will no longer have power over how you feel. You are not required to bend, to explain, or to shrink just because someone else decided to twist your story. In fact, the more you live aligned with your values, the more you expose the fiction in their words. So do not waste your light trying to illuminate every dark room. The person who outlasts gossip is not the loudest but the one who continues to walk forward with grace, with stillness, and with unwavering truth. That is the Stoic way. Stay grounded in that silence. Let it roar louder than any rumor ever could. Reason number 5 is personal insecurities and projection, an invisible force that often fuels quiet resentment without you ever realizing where it started. Insecurity is not always loud or obvious. It hides in politeness, in forced smiles, in subtle dismissals that seem small but carry a sting. When someone has not made peace with their own fears, failures, or sense of inadequacy, your presence can act as a mirror. And what they see in that reflection is not always flattering. It is not your success or your confidence or your discipline that offends them. It is what those traits reveal about what they lack, what they abandoned, or what they fear they will never become. In that moment, without your consent or awareness, you become a symbol of their self-doubt. And instead of facing that discomfort, they project it onto you. This is not always a conscious choice. It is a psychological reflex. It is easier for someone to resent you than to confront their own reflection. It could be a friend who minimizes your progress, a coworker who suddenly grows distant, or a family member who turns cold when your ambition outpaces theirs. You are not doing anything wrong. You are just doing what they wish they could. That is the painful truth. And yet, the Stoic teaches you to see beyond the surface. As Seneca once said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. So when someone attacks you, mocks you, or withdraws from you, it may not be about your flaws but about their pain. Your calm confidence unsettles them. Your growth threatens their comfort. And instead of being inspired, they feel exposed. But that does not mean you need to carry their burden. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that if someone shows us our fault, we should change, but if they merely criticize without clarity, we hold to our course. You are not here to shrink so that others can feel tall. You are not responsible for the wounds they refuse to heal. But you can remain centered. You can choose not to retaliate, not because you are weak but because you see what they do not. That their hostility is not about you. It is a cry from a place they have not dared to explore. And when you understand that, you do not absorb their projections. You simply step aside and let them pass. That is not indifference. That is wisdom. It is strength. It is the practice of refusing to be baited into battles that were never yours to fight. So let them think what they will. Let them project what they must. You do not need to correct every misjudgment or explain every choice. Your integrity will speak louder over time. The storm they are fighting is not your responsibility. And the more you walk in truth, the more you give them a choice, to rise, or to keep falling into the shadows they created. Either way, you remain unmoved. That is the Stoic way. Walk forward without apology, and let your light remain a quiet challenge they can either fear or follow. Reason number 6 is the lack of empathy and understanding, a silent but potent source of resentment that often goes unnoticed until it begins to poison connection. Not everyone you meet will have the capacity to step outside themselves and truly see you, and when a person lacks empathy, your actions, your words, even your presence can be twisted into something threatening or offensive, not because of who you are, but because of how limited their perception is. When someone cannot imagine your experience, they begin to interpret your choices through their own narrow lens, often shaped by ego, bias, or unhealed wounds. A moment of stillness becomes arrogance, a boundary becomes rejection, a success becomes an attack, and in that distorted interpretation, resentment is born, not from truth, but from emotional blindness. Stoicism reminds us that it is not events themselves that disturb us but our judgments about them, and those who lack empathy are often trapped in judgments they don't even realize they're making. They assume, conclude, react, all without asking, all without understanding. And so, hostility grows not from what happened, but from what they imagined happened. You become the villain in a story you were never even allowed to speak into, and this is where many people feel trapped, trying to explain themselves to someone committed to misunderstanding them. But this is where Stoic wisdom becomes your shield. You are not responsible for their failure to see. You are not required to shrink your truth so it fits within their limited awareness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You always own the option of having no opinion." That includes opinions others have about you. When someone's resentment is rooted in a refusal to understand, your best defense is stillness, not silence rooted in fear, but silence rooted in strength, the kind that knows it has nothing to prove. Still, the Stoic does not become cold or closed. You do not meet ignorance with hatred, you meet it with discernment. You recognize that not everyone has the emotional bandwidth to meet you where you are, and when that's the case, you don't chase clarity from the unclear. You simply choose peace over friction. Empathy is a bridge, and not everyone wants to build one. Some people prefer the safety of their own perspective even if it isolates them. When that happens, your role is to walk on, not in judgment, but in understanding, not bitter, but grounded. Their resentment, born from their inability to see you, is not a burden for you to carry. It's a reflection of the emotional distance they keep between themselves and the truth. And no matter how clearly you speak, some will only ever hear the echoes of their own fears. In those moments, your job is not to force connection, it is to maintain your center. Do not allow yourself to be dragged into someone else's confusion. Stay rooted in what you know, who you are, and how you choose to move through the world. And when it's clear that empathy will not be returned, return to yourself. That's not weakness. That's self-respect. That's Stoic freedom. Walk on, anchored in clarity, guided by compassion, but never bound by another's refusal to understand. Reason number 7 is competition or rivalry, a hidden force that silently turns admiration into resentment when comparison infects the space between two people. Often it begins innocently, as mutual ambition or shared goals, but without conscious self-mastery, that shared striving becomes a measuring stick, and every step you take forward becomes a perceived threat to someone else's sense of worth. This is not the healthy kind of competition that lifts both people up, but the corrosive kind, the kind that masquerades as support while quietly hoping you fail. It hides behind applause that feels hollow, compliments with sharp edges, and conversations laced with subtle digs. In this kind of rivalry, your wins don't inspire, they provoke. Your discipline is no longer respected, it's resented. Your consistency is no longer admired, it's dissected for flaws. You may notice it in a colleague who once cheered you on but now goes quiet every time you succeed. Or in a friend who once shared dreams but now avoids eye contact when you talk about your progress. This shift doesn't happen because you've changed, but because your growth revealed their stagnation, and rather than facing their own lack of effort or clarity, they turn their frustration outward. Stoicism teaches that the only comparison worth making is with your former self, that true growth is not about beating others but becoming more aligned with your values each day. As Epictetus said, seek not the good in external things, seek it in yourselves. But those caught in the web of rivalry do the opposite. They seek validation in beating others, in being seen as superior, and when you quietly rise, you shatter the illusion that they're ahead. That can trigger resentment not because of your arrogance, but because of your authenticity. You didn't boast, you just stayed consistent. You didn't compete, you just focused. But even that is enough to disturb those still at war with themselves. In such moments, your task is not to dim your light but to hold your posture with grace. Do not shrink to soothe someone else's ego. Do not apologize for your evolution. Instead, return to the Stoic principle of inner excellence. Let your success be a byproduct of discipline, not domination. Let your efforts speak louder than their projection. And when someone tries to turn you into a rival you never chose to be, respond with detachment, not disdain. You are not here to win at life by climbing over others. You are here to master yourself, to refine your character, and to walk in quiet alignment with who you know you can become. When others drag you into their silent war of envy and comparison, offer them something rarer, your peace. Because the strongest person in the room is not the one who competes the loudest. It's the one who keeps building, keeps showing up, keeps growing, without ever needing to tear anyone else down. That is Stoic power. That is true victory. Reason number 8 is the influence of social expectations, and it is one of the most overlooked reasons why people might secretly hate you without even realizing why. It is not always your actions or your words that provoke discomfort in others. Sometimes it is your refusal to fit the mold, to comply silently with the script they have memorized but never questioned. You see, society is full of invisible chains, silent rules handed down from generation to generation telling you how to dress, how to speak, whom to love, when to settle, and when to stay silent. When you step outside of that framework, when you choose purpose over popularity or authenticity over approval, you disturb something deep in the hearts of those who have never dared to question the rules. Your courage becomes an accusation, not by intention, but by existence. You live freely and suddenly others must ask themselves why they do not. You walk away from tradition and they begin to wonder what tradition has cost them. You speak truth and it echoes through their years of silence. This is why some people will start resenting you without ever having a real conversation with you, because you remind them of the person they might have been if only they had been braver. Your rebellion is not loud, it is not angry, it is stillness, and that stillness is powerful. It makes people uncomfortable because it reflects the truth that peace is possible, freedom is possible, and many of them have chosen comfort instead. Stoicism teaches that we are not to live by default, but by design, not by what pleases the crowd, but by what aligns with our soul. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that we should waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be, we should simply be one. And in doing so, you will provoke not just admiration, but judgment, fear, even hatred. Not because you are wrong, but because you are different. But different is not dangerous. It is necessary. In a world addicted to sameness, your clarity will be labeled strange, your boundaries will be called arrogance, and your peace will be misunderstood as coldness. But you must remember, you were not born to satisfy society's expectations, you were born to walk your path with clarity and strength. Those who resent you for not following their rules are not your enemies, they are simply confused witnesses of a freedom they never claimed for themselves. So when their eyes narrow and their words turn sharp, when you feel the sting of judgment or the chill of disapproval, do not fold. Do not shrink. Do not water down your truth. Keep walking. Because the greatest gift you give to this world is not your obedience, it is your authenticity. And the ones who cannot love you as you are were never meant to stand beside you in the first place. Let them go. Stay true. And in that unwavering truth, you will find a peace no crowd can ever offer. Reason number 9 is the lack of recognition, and it quietly erodes relationships and fuels secret hatred, not because you hurt someone but because you reminded them of how unseen they feel in their own life, in a world where everyone is silently craving to be acknowledged, validated, or even simply noticed. Your presence, your success, or your self-assurance can unintentionally highlight someone else's internal void. You do not have to brag or announce anything, sometimes just the way you carry yourself, the ease with which you move through life, the inner clarity you reflect, it stirs something inside another person, something unspoken yet deeply emotional. When someone gives and still feels invisible, when they show up for others but no one shows up for them, when their efforts go unnoticed while yours are celebrated, they do not always respond with honesty or self-reflection. They respond with bitterness, resentment, and quiet detachment. They begin to believe that life is unfair, that the world applauds those who are louder or luckier, and in that frustration, you become a target, not because you wronged them, but because you became a symbol of what they feel they deserved but never received. Your recognition becomes a mirror, and when they look into that mirror they see every time they were overlooked, forgotten, or dismissed, and that pain, if left unchecked, turns inward and then outward. It becomes a subtle hostility masked by politeness or concealed by distance. You may feel it in a comment that stings more than it should, in a celebration they avoid attending, in a silence that feels too heavy, and it is confusing because you never meant to harm them. But here is where Stoicism offers you freedom. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that external things like praise, status, and attention are not within our control and are not what define us. So when others resent you for being seen, for being recognized, it is not your burden to carry, it is not your responsibility to dull your light just to soothe someone else's shadow. But this awareness does not make you cold, it makes you clear. You begin to understand that sometimes people act out not because they are bad, but because they are broken, and while you cannot heal their inner wounds, you can choose how you respond. You can offer kindness without sacrificing boundaries, you can show humility without diminishing your worth, and you can walk away from guilt that was never yours to begin with. If you sense that someone hates you quietly because they feel invisible, remember that their pain is real, but it is not your fault. You are not the cause of their suffering, you are merely the reflection of everything they feel denied. This is why some people will try to discredit you, downplay your efforts, or celebrate your failures more than your wins, not because they know your truth, but because they cannot sit with their own. And that is where you must stay anchored, grounded in your purpose, detached from praise or blame, indifferent to the applause, loyal only to your principles, because recognition will come and go, people's opinions will change with the wind, but your integrity, your quiet discipline, your resilience, that is what remains. And if you live with that unshakable core, you will be free from the hatred of others, not because they stop hating, but because their hate can no longer reach you. In the end, it is not being unseen that makes people bitter, it is forgetting their own worth, and when you remember yours, you become untouchable. So now you understand the quiet reasons why people may secretly hate you. Not for your actions, but for what you reflect back at them. Their envy, their insecurity, their unresolved pain. And in these moments, the Stoic path remains clear. You are not here to manage how others feel about you. You are here to master how you respond to the world. Stay rooted in what you can control. Your thoughts, your choices, your presence. Let go of the rest. If someone resents your light, keep shining. If someone misjudges your silence, remain still. If someone hates you in secret, walk forward in peace. Because the truth is, your calm will disturb those at war with themselves. But that is not your problem to fix. That is your power to protect. Keep showing up. Keep rising with grace. Let your integrity be the only explanation you ever need. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, do one small favor. Subscribe to Stoic Legacy. It helps us reach more people who are ready to walk this quiet, powerful path. And it tells the algorithm to serve more calm in a world full of noise. If you made it this far, drop a comment that simply says, "I choose peace." That's how we'll know you're one of us. Someone who walks with strength, but never shouts it. Someone who sees the world clearly, but never loses their own center. And as always, stay stoic and build your stoic legacy.